Yeah.
8TP Combat Media. What it do? It's your boy Rain back at you guys with another one. Shout out to all my subscribers. If this is your first time tapping into content, you know what to do. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Look, let's get right to it, right? David Morrell responds to all of the accusations that the David Benavidez team has put out there, right? You know, we know that at the end of the day, David Benavidez has done interviews. His strength and conditioning coach, Memo has done interviews, and everybody inquiring into David Morrell's lack of enthusiasm, we'll say, behind these performance enhancement drug tests. Right, it just seems to have been an uphill battle at this point for a lot of fighters, not just David Benavidez, a lot of other fighters who have stacked up as well, saying that, you know, when it came time to compete with David Benavidez, that actually doing performance enhancement drug tests, that the PEDs, the VADA tests that were on the table for every other fight they did, especially when you get into these championship fights, that it seemed to be an uphill battle for David Morrell. Now, most of the time, it seems like David Morrell, if you put the pressure on him, like David Benavidez has done, that he will take the test, right? But other fighters spoke towards the fact that they come to fight the David Benavidez, come to find out at the end of the fight that he wasn't tested, and even test that was promised to David Morrell, or to the fighter, that basically saying that David Morrell would take the test, that these tests weren't happening. So suspicion, to say the least, is probably an understatement, that David Morrell's been under the microscope of the whole boxing community, but especially with David Benavidez, specifically with his team, who aren't going to take any shorts. They're keeping a very close eye as to how this is moving. So shout out to Sean Zeitel, who did an interview with David Benavidez, with David Morrell. Shout out to both Davids. Who did an interview with David Morrell, and this came up in the conversation about the accusations and how David Morrell felt about it. Well, David Morrell basically said, listen, this is what's going to happen because I'm a puncher. I'm a power puncher. And obviously there's some concern over on that side about me bringing adversity to David Benavidez that he's never dealt with before, right? Basically saying that at the end of the day, David Benavidez has never had a fighter in front of him that can bring the threat that David Morrell brings to the table, and that this is something he's going to have to deal with. And basically saying no excuses, there's no escape. He will be testing clean. He understands that there's anxiety there, but this is the test. May the best man win. Where do I stand on this? Well, look, guys, I've told you guys how I felt about this already, right? At the end of the day, David Morrell hasn't popped on any performance enhancement drug tests, and neither has David Benavidez. Matter of fact, if anybody's popped on anything when it comes to these tests, would be David Benavidez, who popped on recreational drugs. We know that he was playing with the nose candy for a little bit early in his career and actually lost his title behind him in not performance enhancement drugs, unless, I don't know how you want to look at it, in a way it is, right? But ultimately, the one guy who's had issues with testing and coming up positive on certain tests would be David Benavidez. David Morrell, a clean fighter up to this day, no matter what the suspicion is what it is. But in actuality, in all reality, David Morrell has never popped on a test. It's going to continue to highlight the idea that I have to agree with David Morrell to a degree. Obviously, there's enough concerns. David Morrell is a puncher, a high knockout ratio fighter, high skill set. He brings a pedigree to the table. And David Benavidez probably rightfully should be concerned that this fight is going to be on an even playing field. And if David Morrell, in fact, is using some sort of performance enhancement drugs that's bringing an end to 9 out of the 10 fighters that come across the ring from him, then there should be some concern there. But at the same time, it also goes down the line of how deep in David Benavidez's head is David Morrell and his team. They're up there for free, right? It could work either way, because at the end of the day, David Benavidez could be training as hard as he's ever trained, really putting in the work to make sure that there's no boxes unchecked, that there's no T's uncrossed, no I's undotted, and that he's at top level performance and ready to go ahead and fight the best David Morrell that the whole entire boxing community has ever seen potentially, right? Now, there's rumors also going on out there that David Benavidez may be considering moving up to a cruiserweight division to potentially, challenge Zerto Ramirez, right? Gilberto Ramirez, the unified champion right now in the cruiserweight division. And David Benavidez, if you guys looked at him in his last showing when he had that face-to-face with David Morrell, he really had that dad bod on him, really looked soft in the middle section of his body. You have to ask yourself, David Benavidez being somebody who I don't want to say has struggled with weight, but in his past was a big person, a big child growing into the boxing space, has slimmed down to fight down to the levels of a 168 pounder, and always has been the bigger fighter going into the ring, maybe even the bigger fighter going into this fight. His last fight against Alexander Vazdik, he was in decent shape, right? He was in decent shape, but it did look like his conditioning was in question a little bit towards the end of that fight. But a lot of people are talking about the ailments that he walked into that fight with, and those issues that David Benavidez says is not going to be an issue in this fight. So we're looking for a top level, one of the best level David Benavidez is that ever came in the ring. He does bring the experience to the ring, but David Morrell clearly brings that right hand, the threat of a right hand. Or is it the left hand? Is it right? Is it? Don't quote me right now because I'm not even can't remember if he's a southpaw or not right now. But at the end of the day, he does bring the threat of some heavy hands, right? And David Benavidez has to deal with that. Him talking about coming forward, putting the pressure on David Morrell, you guys know, gives David Morrell a whole lot of opportunity to capitalize on that. When you're punching, you always leave yourself open to be punched, and that's part of the game. What is the old saying goes? You can't swim and not get wet. So we'll see what it turns out. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments, because David Morrell has responded to accusations. Doesn't seem like he has anything to hide. Ultimately, combine that with the fact that Victor Conti's coming out and confirmed with Tom Brown as well that the highest level of VADA testing is being done. Random testing is being done. David Morrell's already been tested a few times already, well over 5 times at this point that he's been tested, and he's going to continue to be tested until this February 1st date, where these guys will meet each other. And if David Morrell does come clean all the way until that point, well, look, we have a fight, right? And when we do have the fight, David Morrell is going to be who David Morrell is. Who will David Benavidez be in that match? And both of them bringing their best versions of themselves to the ring. Who's going to walk out with the victory? I think the favorite is going to be David Benavidez because the experience, but as I said before, David Morrell does bring that threat to the ring. That I believe also, and I have to agree with David Morrell, that David Benavidez has not seen this type of threat yet. And you can tell that the concern is there with the magnifying glass on the performance enhancement drug testing, on the VADA testing that's being done on this fight, even though David Morrell has never popped on a test, but clearly has brought suspicion onto his team with the way they've dealt with the testing and also with the amount of knockouts that he has on his record. Let me know what you think. It's your boy Claymore Rain. Once again, thank you to all the support. Shout out to all my subscribers. I really appreciate you guys. It means the world to me. If this is your first time tapping into the content, remember, man, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit your bell icon so you're all getting alerts when all this content is dropping. Make sure before you leave, guys, hit the like as well. Let's help these videos get into the algorithm. Appreciate you guys again. But at this point, we out.